Hello, RG12 here again. Hope everybody's doing fine. As it's the build up to remembrance, as I mentioned the other day when I was sat in the garden, I was going to read some extracts from my book, Still Watching Men Burn, Fighting the PTSD War. I ended up writing this book because I was diagnosed with PTSD and I was told to go away and write things down by the counsellor a lot of years ago, and it turned into my writing career and writing a book. So this is a little background to the Falklands for those of you that don't know that much about it. Same as we didn't actually when we found out that it'd been invaded. So anyway, here goes. At first sight, the Falklands are not the sort of place you'd imagine wars being fought over. A group of 700 or so bleak, hilly, windswept islands, roughly half the size of Wales, situated in the freezing South Atlantic, around 400 miles from south of the American mainland. They possess a beauty of sorts, but you have to be a true connoisseur of wilderness to appreciate it. Whichever way you look, all you see are miles and miles of empty, undulating, grey-green grasslands, granite and scars of dark, peaty soil, in which no indigenous trees grow. It never gets very hot. Even in January, at the height of the southern hemisphere summer, it's barely above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And while the sun shines weekly down for much of the year, it's often bitterly cold, especially when the biting wind blows up from the Antarctic Circle a few hundred miles south. There's fishing, sheep farming, and possibly offshore oil at some point in the future. But there are no hidden riches, no gold mines, and no particular strategic significance to the place. However, it is British, regardless of what Argentina may think, and the people who live there look to us for their protection. The Argentinians have long claimed the islands of their own, but they were discovered by an Englishman, Captain John Davis, on the ship Desire in August 1592. The first recorded landing was made in 1690 by another English sailor, Captain John Strong, who named the channel dividing the two main islands Falkland Sound, after Viscount Falkland, the Royal Navy's treasurer. The British took formal possession of the islands for the Crown in 1765, fully 51 years before Argentina even existed. And although there was some toing and froing with the French and the Spanish governments over the next few decades, they were never relinquished. A permanent British presence was established on the islands in 1833, and our administration remained unbroken from then until now, apart from 10 weeks in 1982. This is the story of my small part in ending the Argentinian occupation of the Falklands 43 years ago. About how I found myself in the army and on those islands so far from home, what I did there and how that changed my life forever. The official figures show that over 250 British soldiers and Falkland Islanders died in the war, together with more than 1,000 Argentinians. Many people have wondered whether that empty toehold in the Southern Ocean was worth all those deaths. Tragically as they were, I'm not one of them. I think the Falklands were worth fighting for. I'm proud to have got the chance to take part, and I'd do it all again in an instant. That was just a brief introduction to people that, for people that didn't know much about where it is. And now I'll read the first chapter that I called Death from Above. The noise was unbelievably quick and almost paralysingly loud, and the terror it brought, fleeting though it was mind-numbing. Until you've been attacked by a fast jet bomber, you can't imagine what it's like. Forget the movies, they're a joke. Even standing at the end of an airport runway and listening to the big 747s come and go doesn't come anywhere near. The plane passed over us at a height around 30 feet. He'd have knocked the chimney pots off my house back home, and he was doing well over 600 miles an hour. At low level and at that speed, the sound of its howling turbofan engines was here and gone in a matter of seconds, like a deafening, horrifying thunderclap that turned my insides to mush. The almost overwhelming urge, if you have the time, is to hide, to dive into a trench, get behind rocks, find some sort of cover. But that's not an option for professional soldiers. And it certainly wasn't an option for rapier missile operators. Our job was to do the exact opposite, to sit there naked to the world in the hot seat of the system and try to shoot the enemy down. It wasn't a comfortable experience. Our positions were always highly exposed, and our camouflage was next to non-existent, and the pilots knew what we had in mind. This one had come over the hills behind us just after we finished our T's and A's, tests and adjustments, sticking to the contours of the land to make it even harder for us to hit him, and banking away in search of our ships as he passed above. I could see the word Armada stenciled on the side of the white-bellied plane, the bombs on his underside, and the helmeted head of the pilot turned downwards to look at us. Then he was gone, leaving nothing but his downdraft, the hot smell of kerosene exhaust, and a loud ringing in my ears. Nearby, a platoon of infantrymen were yelling abuse and letting rip with their SLRs and GPMGs. Several hundred rounds disappeared into the pale blue sky in a futile gesture of defiance. It's extremely hard to hit a fast jet with a rifle. The boys were giving it a good go. To my right, one of our missiles roared off the beam as Quinney engaged the Argentinian, but he pulled right and disappeared around the headland and away to safety, and the missile fell harmlessly into the sea. I watched him all the way as he streaked out of sight, and silently thanked God he had other targets on his mind that day. The unlucky ones didn't get that chance. At those speeds, if he's on his bombing run and he knows what he's doing, by the time you've heard the jet, you're already on your way to the next world, propelled there by a couple of tons of high explosive, a vicious hail of supersonic steel shrapnel. This was my introduction to the A4 Skyhawk, one of the number of planes thrown at us by the Argentinians during the Falklands War. The A4 was a 40-foot, 8-ton workhorse of a killer, which would go on to wreak havoc on our shipping during the conflict, destroying HMS Coventry, HMS Antelope, and the RFA Sir Galahad, and taking a lot of good lads with them. A number of pilots lost their own lives flying with an almost reckless bravery that you had to admire, even while you hated the bastards and wanted them all dead. As the sound of the disappearing jet blended into the background noise of the wind and the calling seagulls, I got on with digging my trench. We'd only landed on the Falklands a couple of hours before. As I dug, my mind was buzzing with adrenaline, and my heart was still thumping in my chest. Although we'd had an air raid warning, I hadn't heard a thing until he was almost on top of us, and the reaction time was close to zero. If we'd entertained any doubts that this war was the real thing, and that people were going to die, they were surely gone now. This was deadly serious. So that was the first chapter. Tomorrow I'll read you the second chapter, Serving the Apprenticeship. So thanks for watching. Thanks to you that have subscribed. That means an awful lot to me. Please, if you just found this for the first time, please like, please subscribe. It means the world. And we will remember them. For now, God bless, and RG12 out.